in my culture, in the land where my people come from, we have...
Chicago?
Yes. We have a... I guess you could call him... Some might call him a hero. Some might call him a no-good, low-down, dirty rascal named Hershel of Ostropol. Now, Hershel is known for getting the best of people, usually in a harmless way. Some might call it sticking it to the man. So, there are many stories about Hershel, and I'll just tell you a few of my favorites. One night, Hershel was traveling far from home, and he felt a rumbling in his stomach and realized that he'd been on the road for 3 days and had very little to eat, and he had been sleeping on the side of the road in bushes under trees. He hadn't had a good night rest in a very long time, but he was too poor to afford a stay at an inn. But he figures, well, let me see what I can do. And he finds an inn, and he goes in, and he goes up to the innkeeper and asks if he could have some scraps from the kitchen and a pile of hay in the barn for him to sleep on. And the innkeeper and his wife tell him, well, unfortunately, we can't give away free food and we don't have any space in our stable for the night. I'm so sorry. And Hershel says to the man, you're going to deny me food and a place to sleep for the night? And the innkeeper is a little taken aback and stammers, yes? And Hershel says, do you know who I am? Do you know who my father was? Do you know what my father did when somebody denied him food and a place to sleep? And at this point, the wife whispers to her husband and says, this man is clearly insane. I don't know, whatever his father did must have been very bad. Let's give him whatever he wants. And so they not only give him table scraps, but they invite him to their own table and feast with him and give him one of the greatest rooms they have for the night. And he sleeps like a king, or at least as far as a king that sleeps at an inn on the side of the road in rural Poland. He wakes up, he has breakfast with the innkeeper and his wife, and as he packs his belongings to leave, the innkeeper and his wife say, we have to know, what did your dad do when somebody denied him? And he said, my father, when somebody denied him food, well, he went to bed hungry. And you wouldn't have had me do that, would you? That's the end. Another time, and these are all shorter, I promise. Hershel and another one of his vagabond friends are walking down the road, and they've scraped together some money from begging and some odd jobs around town. And Hershel goes to the bakery, and he buys 2 loaves of bread. And they're beautiful, but one is clearly the larger, better loaf of bread than the other. And Hershel returns to his friend and gives him the smaller, weaker loaf. And his friend says, well, that's kind of rude of you, don't you think? And Hershel says, well, whatever do you mean? And his friend says, well, you gave me the smaller loaf and kept the larger loaf for yourself. And Hershel says, well, what would you do if you were in my position? And his friend says, well, I would keep the smaller loaf and I would give you the larger one. And Hershel says, so we've both gotten exactly what we wanted. As he continues down the road, after parting ways with his friend, he's even further into Poland and farther away from his home. And a man on a very large horse with an ornate saddle and beautiful sewn garments rides into town, and when he does, all of the locals take their hats off and they bow in front of this lord and his horse. Except Hershel does not. He leaves his hat upon his head, and he does not bow to any man. And the lord rides up to him in anger and says, you're not from around here. Where are you from? And Hershel responds, well, my lord, I'm from Ostropol. And the lord looks him up and down and sees that Hershel still hasn't removed his hat, and points at him and says, the hat? And Hershel says, well, the hat's from Ostropol too, my lord. And the last one time Hershel, in a scheme to make some money, was selling trinkets and passing them off as antiques. And when a large crowd comes by, he announces that he's revealing his masterpiece. and he pulls down a tarp, and there's an enormous blank white canvas. And he says to the customers who start asking and inquiring about the canvas, he says, "For 1 ruble, I will tell you about this painting. But it's a very important secret, so I can't just tell anyone unless they're really, interested in what's happening here." And one man comes forward from the crowd and says, "I'll pay you 1 ruble to tell me about this painting." And Hershel takes the man aside and says, "Well, this is a famous painting. The Hebrews crossing the Red Sea, pursued by the Egyptians." And the man says, "But where are the Hebrews?" And Hershel responds, "Well, they've crossed." "Where are the Egyptians?" "Well, they're pursuing. They haven't shown up yet." And he says, "But where's the Red Sea?" "It's split, you idiot." Thank you very much.
Yes.